On today's show, we get into electric cars, Sean's breathwork retreat, Googling your way to success, and the mental traps of perfectionism. We had a technical difficulty on this end, and we're both like trying to pull our hair out. Meanwhile, there's people stuck on the fucking space station for 6 months.
They're
Like
still
we don't have.
they
Yeah,
still out there?
yeah. They haven't been able to bring them down. Like they have real problems, and we're just complaining about our like. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Restart. We have to learn sign language. The
So so
shocker.
so so what was the issue?
It could be this Mac. I've been using it so much lately. So I have a program. This is good advice for anybody who's got a Mac or a PC. And I think I even shared it with you, that Clean My Mac thing.
Mhm.
So I used to run it like at least every 2 days, sometimes every day. At the end of the day, I would just run it and I would shut down. And that's how I've kept my computers really healthy over the years. Now Macs don't need a lot of maintenance. We all know they're expensive, but they're worth every penny. But I would run that Clean My Mac program. Here we go again, talking about a platform and not getting it anymore. But I would run that program and it keeps it super fast. I've been so busy lately, and I've just been like closing it every night without
Mm.
closing anything. Maybe, who knows? So you are in Denver still, right?
Yeah, I'm in Denver, so I forget the
Yeah.
last time we did a podcast. I think I was
Yeah.
still in New York City at the time there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when we did the interview with Christy Sullivan there about the executive remote worker. So yeah, we did. We finished off the week in New York, and then we did a 10-day trip into California. And during that 10 days, we're doing a 6-day retreat as well.
Ah,
So I was like kind of I was participating for most of it, but I was also there to do a little bit of work and also doing the filming and videography and taking pictures, which isn't really my specialty, but I'm really good at it. Like every time my girlfriend posts a photo of her on Instagram, she always tags, photo credit Sean.
that's fun.
So yeah, so we've been doing that, and we're in Denver. I've been here for about 10 days now, and we're leaving in 12 days. We're leaving on the 24th back to Mexico for the winter.
Denver's a nice place, man. Depending upon what part of the city you're in, you can find anything you want there. Now, they've had some extremely explosive growth over the last
Mm.
20 years. It used to be like this tiny little place, not tiny, but it used to be like a smallish city, and now it's like, I'm sure you've noticed the traffic. And I don't know how much driving around you guys are doing, but there's like shit in every direction for miles.
Yes, we rented a car here, and I'll get on that topic of electric cars. It's so frustrating. Actually, I'll dive into that right now. So yeah, we
Sure.
rented an electric car because my girlfriend's stepfather works at Hertz, so he gets good deals on car rentals. So like, first of all, half the charging stations are free, which is weird. You just like go up and like you like got to sign up for their app and then put their credit card in, but they don't charge you money. But half the charging stations don't work. So you go there, it says offline or it's not working. Then you have to actually Google where they are. And then even if you charge your car, let's say for an hour, you get 20% battery that's gone by the time you get home. So like they're just it's so inconvenient. And there's one time where we were trying to plug in the car and try to download these apps and trying to plug it in and nothing's working. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like back of my head, I'm like, if I was at a gas station, I would have filled it up in 5 minutes and I would have been on my way. I would have been
Yeah.
gone. Right. So
Yeah.
like I see they're really good for if you're doing like little in-town driving, but long distance driving, the technology is not there yet. The batteries don't last long enough. And then if you plug it into like a normal like 120-volt house outlet or whatever, in a 12-hour span, we get about 15% battery, which lasts like two
Fuck.
hours.
I thought that would. I thought
Terrible.
it would. I was under the impression if you plugged it in overnight, you'd have a full battery. I didn't know that.
No, so you have to call electricians and rewire your 240-volt to your garage or to outside. So it's like the regular, 3-prong outlet is just it's like a trickle charger. It's so slow. So
Yeah.
you have to, get electricians in which so I mean it does make sense, and we've saved a lot of money on gas because I mean half the time it's free electricity or the chargers might be free stations, but it's just it's not popular enough yet where it's convenient. So I mean it's good to get in now in a sense, but for me, I'm all about speed and delivery and time. Like if I got to go somewhere, I don't want to be sitting like you have to plan your trips now. You have to plan your days. So
Yeah.
let's say if you want to go to the mall and go here, you have to like search up where the nearest charging station is, plug it in there, then walk to where you need to go. So while you're shopping, it's charging. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, it's a bit stressful.
It's still a thing, but I feel like it was a fad for a while. Like we thought the whole country was going to go electric. And look, I have nothing against them. I know they're super fast. They can be fun to drive sometimes. And I feel like we were going to be so much further along than we are now because I have
Yeah.
had a hybrid that I had to plug in. It was a rental, and I had to do the same thing. I went to a little like, oh, there's a charging station. Then you get over there and like you have to download an app for that charging station or that thing. Then you have to link your credit card. I'm like, God damn it, I've been here for 45 minutes already.
I know.
And if you're in a place like Denver, which is there's some affluent people there, I'm sure there's a lot of electric cars. And I think the reason that there's a lot of free charging stations, or there's a lot of accessible charging stations, is because the government put them in anticipation of everybody going electric, and that didn't happen. So, I mean, I'm all for the environment. I don't have anything against electric cars, but like you, like when I need to get something done, I can't just sit around and wait.
Yeah. The funny part too is kind of the irony behind electric cars is people only look at like one certain aspect of it. They're just like, I'm not emitting CO2 or gas emissions anymore. I'm electric. I'm saving the environment. But then you have to like dig deeper. It's like, okay, well, what powers the electrical grid?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So sure, you're not burning gas, but if you're plugging into electricity and everyone's plugging into the electrical grid, the electrical grid has to go up. Now, I think it's like 70-something% of the electrical grid in the United States is all fossil fuels. So like all you're doing is you're just increasing the production of the fossil fuels to power the power stations to charge your car. So you're not really
Yeah.
saving anything until we go like fully green, or we have nuclear, solar, hydro, wind, and there's no fossil fuels. Then it makes sense. It's all renewable energy. But if we're still running 70% of our grid off of fossil fuels and you're plugging in, that grid's going up, means they need to start pumping out more oil or more gas to burn. It's you're not really saving
Yeah.
anything.
And I think that there is a scandal around how some of the batteries, the lithium is mined also, depending
Oh
upon where
God,
we
yeah.
get that from. I think there were some like labor issues. I don't know enough about it to talk about it. I just know it wasn't good news. Whatever I
No, it
read,
was good.
it wasn't good at
But
all. Well, that's, I mean, look, I love Denver. I mean, I've only spent like maybe 3 days there at a time. I spent some time downtown. I spent some time out near the airport, which is kind of boring. It's not like an unclean, unsafe place to be.
yeah.
I enjoyed it. Some of it, when you get out in the suburbs, it's kind of the same thing over and over and over again. They're just building so fast. It's like another apartment complex looks exactly the same as the last one I just drove by. How are you dealing with the altitude?
Yeah, we were in California before. I mean, when we first got to California, we were like 6,500 feet above sea level, and like I'd
Okay.
walk up an incline like this, and by the time I get to the top, I'm like, like dying. I'm not that out of shape, am I? Like Jesus Christ. So I mean, but I was born in the Rockies in British Columbia anyway, so I was used to altitude. Even with living in Mexico, like 2 feet above sea level, you get climatized and used to that kind of environment. But yeah, being up here, it's been good. I mean, it's kind of nice because it's fall right now, so like in the mornings, it's like a little bit chilly. You can put a sweatshirt on, some sweatpants, and walk around, and then take it off and during the day, and be in a t-shirt and shorts. So it's like a nice temperature right now. It's not too hot, not too cold. But yeah, it's a nice place. There's a lot to do, especially with the mountains close by. We're going to be doing a weekend up in the mountains. I think not this coming weekend, but the weekend after. We're going to go up towards like the Vail Pass area and go to some hot springs and enjoy some
Yeah.
life around there. And yeah, it's been good. But yeah, I wasn't. We haven't recorded a podcast in a while here. I'm like, what are we going to talk about today? But there's always something that comes up. We're always talking about
Yeah.
something.
What actually we'll probably like dial back to your retreat in the sense, and we can get in depth on stuff like that. But anyway, if you do go up to head towards like Breckenridge Vale and all that, you're probably going to pass by that little town, Bailey, Colorado, where Christy from Executive
Yeah.
Remote Worker was going to do, because it's halfway. It's like, and I don't think you could avoid it because there's really only two ways to get from where you're at now. Because the highway splits. There's the long way and the short way. So it'd be interesting if you went by that little town. But it was interesting when you mentioned kind of being the quote unquote amateur photographer, if there is such a thing anymore, because it seems like, I mean, we all have cameras in our pockets, so it's not like we don't have access, and some of us get better at doing social media and other things than others do. But it reminds me of just how much you can do with YouTube and figuring things out on your own before you have to go to an expert. And not to sidetrack this into a YouTube Your Way to Success podcast, but when you mentioned that you were doing the filming and the photography at the retreat, if it's something you don't know how to do, in the past you'd have to hire a professional or whatever, and now it's like you can almost find enough information on Google or YouTube now for passable skills. How did you get chosen to do that, and then how did it go? Like, how were they happy with everything? Like, just walk me through the process.
Yeah, and actually that could be a little topic about. I just thought of right now. I had a future client that could be starting with us, and one of her problems is being a perfectionist, and that's kind of what we can talk about with what you just said there. With there's so much you can do on your own. So originally, my girlfriend, she was going to be one of the facilitators at this retreat. So she was leading on one of the day exercises, going through whatever her curriculum was supposed to be that day. So she was already going to the retreat, and she was going to be, facilitating it there. And because we're already doing our traveling, we're in, Colombia, then Montreal, then New York, it made sense that we go there together. And I just, I wanted to go to it, and I felt there was a big, calling for me to go to this. It was actually put on by Ricky Goodall, who does the Conscious Intimacy games. So he's based out of, originally started out them in Tulum and then mostly in Playa del Carmen now, but he's actually in Moncton, Ontario, or New Brunswick. And he's having a retreat there, I think next week. And then he just did the one in California. So I already had a relationship with him. He's been a coach of mine for 5-6 months now. I think we're on the 6th month of our agreement right now, actually. So I was already going to go, and I wanted to be able to support him and support my girlfriend, and just kind of really experience what it's like. But I wanted to still be able to work at the same time. One of the recommendation that they had was don't use your cell phone while you're there, because he wants you to be fully immersed in it and not get distracted by the outside world, and because it's based around intimacy, a lot of people, when they're feeling lonely, they go to their cell phone, to social media, to fill up their dopamine levels and build connection. And he wanted, the whole point of this was to teach us how to build connection within ourselves and with other people. So if you're on your phone, you're losing that connection. Which makes sense. But I just had too many things on the go. I'm leading a few projects for a crypto company in Vancouver that are minting their own coins. So I'm in charge of, relaying between the developers and the client, and I just can't be a week off my phone. So I made an arrangement with him that if, I'll pay, some money for room, board, and food and that kind of stuff. And if you want, I can also take photos and videos. And this way, in between sessions, I can be on my phone or my computer and work. So we made an agreement with that, and it was good. It was a really good retreat. It was actually the first retreat I've ever been to. I've never been to a retreat before. I've done, like 2-day getaways and stuff like that, but for 6 days being immersed in any subject, really. If you do 6 days of anything, whether it be yoga, meditation, cooking, whatever skill it might be, you come out fully changed and fully developed from that. So actually, we got to discuss your little silent retreat later on too, another podcast.
We'll get into that for sure. But I like what you're saying though about this immersion thing, because obviously it works with languages. And I think that's what we're missing these days, is that nobody ever really does anything for a length of time. Everything we do is in short little bits. And it's actually marketed that way. You only have to work out for 4 minutes a day. You only have to do this course for 20 minutes a day. I wonder how much further along people would get if they were like, hey, this is for the next 2 weeks. And I know this isn't feasible. Some people have to work and they have kids and everything else. But if we could be like, I want to learn this, I'm going to learn this, and that's all I'm going to do for the next 4 or 5 days. I don't know how strict the rules were. I'm sure people could still get on their phones in their rooms or their cabins or whatever like that. But that sounds interesting though. And so you went around and you were doing some of the photography. Were there other photographers there?
No, there's no other photographers. So I brought my gimbal, my Osmo to do all the recording, especially like you said, with having the iPhone these days, or any smartphone really, I have the cinematic view on there, so it's like it blur out people in the background and be crystal clear on them. So there's just so much you can do with just a little bit of technology that we have nowadays. You don't need professionals for a lot of it. When it comes to like the editing and stuff like that, that wasn't my part of the job. I just gave him the raw videos, sent it to him. He can get someone to do the editing, create the videos and that kind of stuff that he wants from there. But it was really cool, because when you're participating, you're working on yourself, which is really nice and it's a good thing to do. But when you're videotaping, you get to see everyone else's progress as well. You get to see their transformation, because there's some breathwork exercises we were doing where it'd be 30 minutes of like really intense breathing, and then you're supposed to let out these sighs, and it's like a trauma release. So you'd have people that were like literally just from breathing were starting to like cry and like scream and exhale, and like they're processing all this hidden trauma that was just trapped inside their bodies just from breathing. So
and this was in the middle of the day, no drugs, no, as far as you know. No, so drugs, this was just natural from just breath. I've heard this before, but I've never witnessed it. So, well, that's pretty cool that you actually were there, but you kind of got take a step back and watch everybody else do it. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. So you get to, this was, no drugs. It was at 8 o'clock in the morning. So it was right when you wake up, you go there 8 a.m. or I think it was at 7 in the morning, because breakfast was at 8. So it was first thing in the morning. So I was just kind of waking up, and next thing you know, you're breathing, and you're like, and it was funny too. So for me, like, I hate releasing control. So like I could feel like, like I was like, this is stupid. 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 Right. So like I was holding myself back from really releasing, because it's like, I'm not going to cry from breathing. This is fucking retarded. But then eventually I kind of like, I started talking to myself. I'm like, well, there's no real goal. Like what there's like, I'm not really, because I was comparing myself to other people, because I'd be hearing them crying. I'm like, well, they're crying. I'm not crying. So I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah, it's great.
Right. So it was pretty interesting. But yeah, no, it was a cool experience. We're way up in the mountains, so it's like again kind of like Denver. It was super cold in the morning and really hot during the day and cold at night. But it was a really cool retreat because we got to do we worked on breath work, we did movement yoga classes, we had ecstatic dancing, we had touch based games, verbal games, deep dark secret revelations.
Mhm.
It was a really cool experience, and yeah, it was something that I definitely would do again.
Was this your first experience with actual breath work in that long of a setting? I mean, I think we've all done it a little bit here and there, but nothing that intense.
I've done like 10-minute breath work exercises before going into like an ice plunge or a cold bath in Mexico. They
Sure.
usually teach you how to do regulate your breathing so you're in there, you're not hyperventilating. So I've done some breath work, and then I did a breath work 2 years ago. It was my first kind of like experience with breath work. It was before an ice bath, but it was a long one, and it was one where you like breathe in, breathe in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, and then you exhale and you hold it for as long as you can, and then you inhale and hold it for as long as you can, and my whole body went numb.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're as you're exhaling, you're like you exhale and then you hold. So your body's like just like it's deprived of oxygen. But what happens is it actually pulls the oxygen out of your bloodstream to fill in your lungs. So it cleans out the oxygen in your bloodstream systems, and it was wild experience.
Yeah.
So like that was it's kind of weird how like depending on the type of breathing you do, you can get different results. So the breath work for the cold plunge was designed to give you more of a body euphoria, like tingly out of body experience, and the one that we were doing at the retreat was more meant for like releasing trauma. So it was weird how depending on how many inhales and exhales at the speed, at the rate, how long you hold your breath for, you can get a different experience out of your breathing.
There's a lot of things 5, 10 years ago. If you told me, well, most of the things I've done, psilocybin, everything else, I'd been like, whatever, get out of here. I'll just stick to my Bud Light or whatever. But talking about stuff like that and seeing other people do it,
Yeah.
because you hear about it all the time, like, oh, all this trauma release, or and you're like, sure, but then when you go do it, you're like, shit, this is a real thing. And because the thing is, there's so many gurus out there, and there's so many people out there that have all this fake shit. We're getting away from Western medicine more and more these days, and back into spiritual type things and other guided things. So there actually not only is there the breath work, but within breath work, there's different types of breath work you can do. So you saw it for yourself and
Yeah.
you experienced it then.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get the full experience where like I was releasing trauma and crying, but there's a couple parts where because I was in my head talking to myself like this is dumb. I just started like kind of laughing, but then I kind of realized my what's my self defense mechanism for trauma and emotions is laughter. So when I'm laughing, it's actually kind of like like if you hurt yourself, you're just like instead of like crying, you're like "Ugh."
Yeah.
So I was using that as a way to like actually like refrain myself. So like even though I didn't like full on release any trauma and I was crying from it, I recognized that the patterns that I had of like laughing, being like this is fucking stupid,
I love it,
right?
bro. Yeah.
That was me holding back the tears. So technically it worked. Right?
Okay. So you were kind of
Technically,
fighting against yourself, but not really trying, but it was
yeah.
just a mechanism. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
so I realized that about myself. So yeah, it's kind of like working out. Like I mean, you can just say
Yeah.
like breath work and working out are the exact same, but there's yoga, there's CrossFit, there's weight training, there's cardio, there's deep inhale, there's trauma, there's so many different avenues with breath work, but we're only really just kind of diving into it recently. And like you said in the past, if someone said, "Oh, hey, if you want to have a body orgasm, just breathe," I'm like, okay,
Yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll
sure.
stick to my box of Kleenex in my belt. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
or
I
the
don't know if we
woman
can
I'm
put
seeing.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know
yeah,
if I have to.
something.
No, do I have to cut that out? I don't know. That's the thing. I'm not. So just in case we're not canceled by the time this airs, we've been doing some research on how much vulgarity we could put into these things, and so far we're not holding back on anything, and we're not going to edit anything out. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
But
we're so far so good.
yeah,
There was one of the shorts we released actually. It
hmm
said adult
18 and
content.
plus. Yeah.
You had to click on it. But on other news, my hair is getting super long now.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, yeah. That's not taking
Uh,
long at all. Must be all
no,
the breath work. You're breathing it
yeah,
out. Yeah.
I haven't cut this since Mexico.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, to keep it going. They say it grows, what, 6 inches a year. I've just told by the lady who cuts my hair, which is probably true because it's been, I hate to do this on camera because I think it's such a fucking tool, but it is fucking long. So it's 6 days, just in case anybody's interested in this kind of thing. Do you feel like it that's too long, too short? And the reason I bring that up is because I did my retreat that we'll talk about some other day, and it was
Yeah.
10 days. And I feel like I got kind of what I needed personally. It clicked around day 6 or 7, which is still a long time. Was this like a beginner's breath work thing? So let's say somebody shows up and has zero idea, because some people need to walk in there and be taught like they've never heard of this thing before.
Yeah. So I think that the timeline was actually pretty good. I think 6 days was a good enough amount of time. I think if it was any less, you wouldn't have got as much out of it, because like there's a few people, and obviously I'll leave names out. There's a few people that I saw there that, you know, by about the first like day 1 to day 3, they're really in their shell. They're really like, you know, timid. They're around new people that they've never met before.
Yeah.
So it took a few days for them to even like open up to be able to like receive the training and the learnings and the lessons. And there's some people that have been to these before where like right at day 1, they're like talking to everybody. They're getting really deep and working on their inner child and working on themselves. But
Yeah.
I think, yeah. And if you went any longer, like I think I've heard of 10-day retreats before. And I think to me, that would just be too much. I think 10 days would be like, you know, depending on what the retreat is exactly, like for you, like a side retreat, if I had to do that for 2 weeks, I go crazy. I'd be like, no, I need something else. But because, you know, it was kind of like living in a community in the forest, because we had breakfast, lunch, dinner all made for us. We had, you know, a tight knit group of people. We do our trainings in the retreat. Then we'd go for lunch to have an hour free. So we'd go to the pool, or we'd, you know, go for a nature walk. So it's just basically like living with like a small group of friends, but working on yourselves. So I think I think I could have done that retreat longer. But there's certain, like, depending, like the more strict ones, the ones where it's like there's no phone, no talking, it'd be tough for me, I think.
Yeah, there probably would have been a benefit there. Like on the one hand, I'm thinking about you like having access to your phone. And again, I know everybody probably check their phones at night. For my thing, I didn't get any bright ideas until day 5 of not having my phone at all. So it took a while for that to kick in. This is different though, this is breath work. But I can sympathize with somebody walking in there and not wanting to open up for a couple of days, because I'm okay with this stuff now. We've been around it for a while, you know, as a group and separately. So I could walk into a place and I could see a bunch of things that I think is kind of strange. And I'd be like, that's cool. 10 years ago, walked in there, I'd be like, what the fuck? Like, I'm not talking to anybody. So I could see
Yeah,
somebody going in there who I give them credit because they showed up, right? They paid and they showed
absolutely.
up, but they're probably still like, what is happening right now? Okay.
Especially if it was in an area like you said, like if I would have went to that retreat 7 years ago when I was working on the railroad or the oil rigs, I'd be like, you guys are a bunch of fucking weirdos. Like, just
Where's the
but
bar?
that's just, yeah, just because, you know, that was the mindset that they had then. That was the mentality I was around. There was the environment of people I was around at the time. So I was just conditioned, programmed, and I learned through my environment that expressing emotions, working on traumas, talking to your inner child, doing
Yeah.
breath work, being on a strict routine, like those things were so foreign to me that even if someone told me that, you know, hey, if you want to be a better person, just talk to yourself when you're 8 years
Yeah.
old in your head. I'm like, excuse
Yeah.
me?
Get away from me, you fucking pussy.
Quit crying.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. At the end of this whole thing, I had this experience also where we didn't speak for 10 days, whatever. But at the
Mhm.
end, people started sharing their experiences. And some people chose not to, which was totally fine because some people go through some weird shit. But so was it was like a daily thing where you go through all the breath work and people would actually talk about it? I imagine some people were more open than others and some people wanted to share and others didn't. Was it kind of like that?
So we kind of had it two ways. We had did that was called popcorn style. So the end of there was broken down to 3 trainings per day. One at 9 a.m. till about noon, and then one from 2 to about 5, and then from 6:30 to 9:30. So about 3 hour segments every time. So at the end of every training session, we'd sit down in like a circle, and we'd say, you know, Ricky, the facilitator, would ask if anybody wanted to share what they experienced during this training. So like, if you wanted to express what you thought and share, then you can. If you didn't want to express anything, you weren't obligated to. But on the very last day, when the closing ceremony that we were holding there, we all went around in order, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just did like a 2 minutes, you know, explanation of what we got out of the weekend. And
Sure.
it was kind of nice. So I actually, you know, I was sitting in the middle of the circle and I was videotaping everyone's answers and getting all their testimonials and
That's
stuff
cool.
like that. So yeah, it was really cool. And as far as like the breath work you're mentioning, like, was it for beginners? It was kind of kind of both. It could have been for beginners and for intermediates and experts. There's a guy there named Brant. I forget his last name. I think Brant Miller, I think is his last name. I'll tag him in the clip after too. So he actually
Sure.
does breathwork meditation retreats himself. So he has his own business in Northern California. He's traveled all around America and Mexico doing breathwork exercises. So Ricky brought him in as another facilitator to lead the breathwork classes in the mornings. Then we had another guy named John. I don't know his last name. I know his Instagram last name is Transcendence. He's an ecstatic dance host. So
He
he's been
sounds
all
like he knows what he's doing.
yeah.
I love it. I
Oh
love
yeah,
it.
no,
I love
really
it.
cool guy. He a little backstory from him. So he actually got into the ecstatic dancing and yoga and health retreat because of a woman.
Aha.
So
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was at Burning Man, and he was partying and being a little too excessive. And I'm not going to say what he was doing because I'll
We
leave
can
his
imagine. We can imagine.
use your imagination. And so he
Yeah.
met this one girl. He met this one girl one day, and she asked him if he wanted to go to this other part of the Burning Man place where it's like retreat or yoga and stuff like that. And he's all, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So goes there, and he fell in love with it, and he really enjoyed it. And so he went to the next 3 years back to Burning Man, alcohol, drug free. He was just going there to do like the dancing and the yoga and the meditation and like experiencing it, and that kind of got him into the realm of where he is now. So he's got a very successful business hosting ecstatic dances and yoga and meditation retreats and stuff like that. So there's about 5 facilitators in total. There's Ricky, the host, I guess. There was my girlfriend, partner Dasha. There was Brant doing the breath work. There was John doing the movements and the ecstatic dancing. And then Zipporah, she was there for more of like the tantra exercises and muscle body releases and stuff like that. So
Shit. This was full spread of like different people doing different things. Yeah, that's a testimonial right there, by the way. If you can go to Burning Man and then go back and not do any drugs or alcohol, that's a pretty tough, strong testimonial for this stuff.
Oh, I would do a festival drug free. It's like, okay.
Yeah. I'll watch it on YouTube.
That was actually another realization I had. So during the ecstatic dance, I think it was on the 4th night there, it was very weird for me to be dancing without any drugs or alcohol, like none.
Yeah.
Especially in like a group setting. Like even when I went to the Zomba music festivals in Mexico last winter, I wasn't drinking because my partner doesn't drink, so I haven't drank in like 6 months now, or maybe even longer.
Great.
Yeah, it's been really good. It's really good.
I just drank last night, so in case you can't tell by my red face. Yeah, just beer, just Miller Lite, but you know what I mean. But yeah, no, that's good. Though. Okay. That's good. Yeah.
But yeah, so even when I was there, we took mushrooms. So I was like kind of high on mushrooms and having fun. So it took me a good hour to like kind of get out of my shell. I'm like, this is again, me telling myself like, this is stupid. I look like a fucking idiot. I look like a fucking idiot. Yeah. And yeah, finally I just, I got over myself. I'm like, everyone else is doing it. Everyone else is having fun. Why can't I have fun? So I finally got out of my shell, and I'm like, I'll do some weird dancing. Yeah.
And everybody looks weird doing it. So, I mean, you probably did look really weird, but who cares? Everybody else is,
I looked weird. I looked weird not dancing.
You're just standing there. Like you're probably the biggest person there also. So what the fuck's wrong with this guy?
Yeah. Is he a bouncer?
Yeah. Whose bodyguard is this?
I remember when I was in, I think I was in Canmore, which is near Banff in Alberta. And I was standing outside. This is back when I used to smoke cigarettes. So standing outside a bar, I was wearing jeans and a black shirt having a cigarette. And I was standing right by the door. So these group of girls come in, like just hand me their IDs. I'm like, what?
Oh,
like one of them said 18. I'm like, yeah, I get in there. They thought I was a bouncer.
There's something we could work with here. I'm not sure what yet. We need to find somebody who looks like a celebrity, like Corey Simon, and like put a hat on him like I've got right now. And then we just you just walk next to him, and then I walk and I carry his little bag or his umbrella for him or something. We could probably get a lot of attention that way.
We did that in Mexico. So there's a buddy of ours named, you remember Gary? Yeah, so like me, Gary, and Corey would walk down Fifth Ave, and Corey's in the middle, like this much shorter between me and Gary walking.
Yeah, that's funny. I like that. Oh my God, it's funny.
But actually, I mean, I know we want to try and keep these around like 40, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We can talk for strategy. I have a strategy idea, actually. We were talking about video editing and stuff like that and perfectionism. So I recently had a call with a lady about us starting on building out her courses and her programs and marketing and stuff like that. We're actually, you and me are going to have a call with her probably next week.
Sure.
And she kind of came to the realization, and I kind of helped her bring that realization to her, is that she's waiting for everything to be perfect before she releases it. So she has everything filmed. She has it all in, I think it's in Thinkific right now, but she wants to change platforms. So she has all this material in this courses, but she's afraid to like go live with it. And she's like, I'm like, well, why haven't you gone live with it yet? And her response was, well, I don't have everything set up yet. And I was like, well, that's the problem, is like half like people that are successful, they don't have everything figured out. They don't have
Mm-hmm.
everything set up yet. They don't have the all the answers to their questions they have. They just have the idea, they have the fundamentals, and they go with it, and they release
Yeah.
it, they start working on it, and they figure things out as they go. So I think that's like a big lesson. We can, if you want to talk about that, touch on that as well, is a lot of people, we wait for all the stars and the moons to align and the right sign from the universe to tell us we need to do it, and everything has to be published and perfect, and your social media accounts have to be up and running, and you're spending all this time making sure everything's perfect, and you're not making a fucking dollar.
And
Right?
meanwhile, nobody notices. So what we
Yeah.
think there may be a flaw in something like that, or maybe this thumbnail doesn't look good, like a graphic. We have all these things in our head, like this isn't perfect yet. You could publish it to the world and they'd be like, this is great. And you'd be like, oh, but I noticed this. I'm like, well, maybe you did, but nobody else is noticing it. Nothing's ever perfect. You just keep convincing yourself that you need to fix or tweak or mess with something else. And on the other end of that, if you put something out that's not perfect, that's why we have different things. For example, like one of the communities we did for our friend Brittany and Ori, we did what was called an alpha launch. And I'll explain this to people because it could be helpful for them. We did what's called an alpha launch. We're going to do a beta launch. And then there's going to be just a public launch. And what I mean by that is the alpha launch is to get founders launch, to get people in there. And so this goes to the woman you're talking about. Sometimes you just need to slap a couple things together, get it in front of people, tell people this is your founders launch. This is the alpha launch. It's not perfect on purpose because we want to get some feedback. We want to get your input, like what's working, what's not, what can we improve? And for that, we'll give you a discount. So you're going to pay a lot less, but we expect you, when we ask you and we give you a poll, and it could be like 20 people, for example, for a community or a course. What do you like? What do you not like? And then you can go on to a beta launch. So you can do this in stages so you can make yourself feel more comfortable. So instead of like, oh my God, everything's got to be perfect out the gate and people are going to hate this or whatever, like, okay, we'll just throw some stuff together, put it out to a small group, keep it small, like limit the launch dates, keep it to like 20 people and make it very clear. This is just the alpha launch. You do a beta launch, same thing. Like there's going to be some problems here. There are going to be glitches. And it really relieves stress on the person because if somebody calls you in the middle of the night or sends a message or something saying, hey, I can't access my course, that's okay. This was to be expected.
Yeah.
And then the third point, the most important one is the longer you sit on something, perfect, whatever stage you think it is in your mind, that's fucking money you're not earning. So if you're better off putting out not crappy, but you're better off putting out a minimum viable product and have to get feedback and have to make edits and make a little bit of money than you are sitting on something for 6 months while it's not making anything. And then you have to launch it anyway. And then you're still just as stressed out. So yeah, everything you said right now, we've faced a bunch of times with clients and it's really important. Just put yourself out there, man.
Yeah. Well, and the reason why I want to bring that up and it kind of came to my mind is when you talked about video editing and stuff like that, and even people that were at the retreat, like, oh, like these videos are really good. Have you done this before? I'm like, no, just kind of playing around and practice, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the time is people were asking me to buy the videos that I recorded. And I never thought of it as a money-making opportunity to do video editing because I just never thought it was a skill point. So there's a lot of things that people will think that they need to perfect, or you need to have all the right equipment. You got to have a certain camera and the devices and the mics and all the flashes and whatever it might be. If you're good at what you can do, and like I said, because technology is so good nowadays, if you just utilize the tools that you have and see if it's a skill set you have or not and play around with it, it could be a money-making opportunity for you as well there. And you don't have to be an expert at it, especially if you're not advertising or publicly announcing yourself as an expert video recorder or photographer, something like that. You say, hey, I can do pretty good videos if you want videos. Then you're not lying to yourself. You're not lying to your clients. You're not lying to people, right? So if you say, yeah, like I can do a TV commercial and you show up with an iPhone, they're like,
or a wedding, that's when you really get in trouble. You show up for a wedding and you fuck that up because then, you'll get in huge trouble for that. Obviously, you have to price yourself accordingly and you have to just let people know like, hey, look, I'm better at this than the guy next to me. So I'm going to charge for this, but it's not going to be super high production quality. I don't work for HBO or
Yeah.
anything else like that. And I think that's where people
And
get hung up.
yeah, and as you build your skill level and your clientele, you can buy better equipment, you can charge more money. But like if your passion, you will use videography for an example. If your passion is being a photographer and you don't have the clientele, you don't have the equipment yet, and you're waiting to have the equipment to start your business, start with what you have, charge what you're worth with the equipment you have, and then build up from that. So a lot of people are like, I remember I used to, when I was fatter, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years ago, I would tell myself that I would go to the gym, I would get a gym membership once I lost weight.
No.
Because I was shy and embarrassed to be in the gym because I felt kind of fat and out of shape. So I think that same mentality goes for a lot of those businesses. Like, I will do this when X happens.
Yeah, I've never heard that before, but that's the perfect example. We're gonna have to use that because because it's funny. Like, I didn't want to look bad in the gym because I've felt that before too. You go in there, there's a bunch of like high school kids working out or something. Do what you can with what you have, and nothing's ever going to be perfect. And people make the mistake of buying all the gadgets and toys and everything else. But if you get some super fancy camera, you're not going to know how to use it anyway. If we guide people and help people do things, especially in our marketing roles, we may not be that much further along than the people we're helping. And sometimes that's easier because sometimes we can relate to where they are now. So if somebody's like struggling with something in their business, maybe we're not 10 years ahead of them. Maybe we're only 6 months. It was like, okay, well, I remember what I just had to go through. So that's an advantage also. So you don't have to be some expert that's been doing this forever. You just need to be a little bit better than the next guy, and it should work out.
It's a big thing that people like perfectionism. That should be the title of this episode. Perfectionism is just don't wait for everything to be perfect. Don't wait for you to be in shape to go to the gym. Don't wait for the best equipment to start that business. Work with what you got. Be happy with what you got. Know what you're worth at that time, right? Like, if you just have an iPhone and you want to start doing weddings, charge $250, right? Because it's going to be iPhone quality photos, and then just keep building it from that. But
and chances are those people are going to get divorced and remarried a couple times anyway. So maybe you can do their next wedding and their next wedding after that.
You could do the courthouse filing of their divorce photos for them or something.
So speaking of titling these things, it's funny because every time I sit down to do it, we talk about so many various things, which is the point of this show. But it's funny, like the one I just edited this morning is one with Corey. So we literally went from what is a brand expert and why is that important to shitting your pants in public. So I'm like, how am I going to put this on a title? But anyway, it's good to see everybody. It's good to catch up with you, man. I think this is a good place to stop before we start boring people with stupid stories. So to be continued.
Yeah. Awesome.